I've been doing some maths, Mrs. Happy Families. As you know, it's not my strong point. But I've discovered we have been parenting since 1999. Okay, so that's...
Okay, so now I'm feeling old.
And
Thank you for the reminder.
I added up the age of each of our children so that I could get a cumulative total of the complete number of years.
Don't go there.
Yeah. So if you add up the age of each of the kids, 103 years of...
No wonder my body feels so old.
That's why we're so tired. 103 years. But this matters because we've got some runs on the board. We've spent some time at the crease. We've done the reps. We love it when you send your questions through, and we can use that hard-won wisdom to try to be helpful.
We actually have some audio today. If you've got a question for us, send us a voice memo, just like Kate's done, to podcasts, that's podcasts with an S, at happyfamilies.com.au.
Here's what Kate said.
Hi, Justin and Kylie. It's Kate here. We have a capable and strong 16-year-old boy. He helps people out a lot and gets a lot of validation from it. Flip side is we can't get him to help us 98% of the time. He's particularly reluctant to help his dad. We are a hard-working family and never would it be acceptable to point-blank refuse to chip in growing up. I'm not talking slave labour. I'm talking help unload the car after a Bunnings trip or help bring up groceries. He gets plenty of downtime, so isn't overloaded by requests for help. Surely we can't be the only family battling this. Advice would be wonderful.
I think we dealt with something like that just the other day in the kitchen. I don't know what had happened,
We did, now that you mention it.
but all of a sudden there was a little bit of a conversation that took place, and then one of our teenagers stormed out of the room, slammed the door.
It was a hurricane.
What happened?
I asked her if she could put away the dishes that were in the dish rack. They were dry. She didn't even have to. It was just too much.
Kate, you are not the only one.
My initial reaction to Kate's question is I almost want to just be glibly dismissive of it and say, welcome to parenting teens. Welcome to parenting teens. We've raised 6 daughters. Several of them have now gone through this stage. And they go through a stage where they do it from the time that they're young, but as they get older, you really notice it more. You expect more of them. And where they respond that way, it's really, really hard to take. I remember a time when I was maybe about the same age, 15, 16 years of age, and Mum asked me to hang some washing on the line. And I remember so distinctly yelling at Mum and saying, "Don't you know I've got a life too?" They're like, here I am. I'm this kid with nothing better to do. And this is I'm saying this to a woman who's raising her own 6 kids, including 2 sets of twins, running 3 businesses, serving actively in her community, in church, who knows what else. So there's some stuff going on, Kate, and we need to address that so that you can help your little guy, he sounds like he's a big guy now,
so little,
to do things in ways that work for your family.
I think first things first, it's really important for us to understand some of the developmental realities that we're dealing with a 16-year-old boy.
Yeah, or teenagers generally. We'll get to boys in a sec, but teenagers generally, they're just wildly egocentric, right? Like they really, truly actually think that everyone is thinking about them, everyone's talking about them, everyone's wanting for them what they want for themselves.
It's interesting. I just had a conversation with a teenager this week who's really, really struggling to find her people. She just doesn't feel like she connects. And when I asked her what she thought was the number one challenge that stopped the connection, she said, I think I'm just in my head so much. I think that when people are looking at me, they're thinking about me, they're talking about me, they're saying the worst things about me. When they say yes, I'm actually thinking they're only saying yes because they feel sorry for me. When they don't say anything, then, she just kept talking and talking. It's all about them without recognizing that these people probably aren't talking about them because they're so worried about themselves.
It's a perfect example. I think the thing here is it just boggles their mind in this instance where we ask them to do something that's inconsistent with their preferences. They're just like, wait, what? No, I'm gaming. I'm on social media. I'm Instagramming. I'm in the middle of the most important message of my life right now. And I know I'm kind of having some fun with this, but that's kind of how it feels for them because of the egocentrism that's associated with being a mid-adolescent. This is what it's about.
They're really good at being in the moment, though, aren't they? Because literally what they're doing is the most important thing that they could be doing in that moment.
Yes, it probably is. There's another issue, though, that we need to talk about. I mentioned that there's a gender issue. And I want to touch on that, and that is the empathy issue. So with boys and empathy, it's really different to girls and empathy. Two different kinds of empathy, Kylie. The empathy that most people are familiar with is the bit where I'm feeling what you're feeling. We call that affective empathy. So in psychology, we talk about affect as being the felt part of our emotions. So if I'm having an affective moment, I'm feeling something really big. Affective empathy is this ability for me to say, oh, it hurts for you and it hurts for me seeing you hurt. That's affective empathy. You're smiling at me as I'm describing this.
I'm thinking back to the early days of our relationship.
Oh, right.
And I remember you literally would look at me sometimes when I was having a meltdown for various different reasons with this absolute blank stare. You had no idea how to be in my shoes in that moment. I think it took a PhD and a whole heap of kids and a whole heap of life before you actually got that effective empathy going.
Yeah, so just to be clear, it's not effective as in effective meaning it's effective and it gets things done, but rather affective. Okay?
Affective.
Just need to clear up the pronunciation.
Effective as well.
well, affective empathy can be pretty effective, yeah, but we're talking about affective empathy. It wasn't a PhD, but boys have to they have to grow into that empathy, and they also have to, it's not just a developmental thing, it's also a motivational thing.
I think that for girls, it's really different though.
I'm getting there. That's exactly where I'm going. So two different kinds of empathy, and then I'll talk about the difference between boys and girls. So there's affective empathy, and then there's also cognitive empathy. Cognitive empathy is the bit where you're telling me what's going on, and in my head I say, I get it. I get how you feel. I'm not feeling the same sadness you're feeling, but I understand how sad you are, and I could imagine that if I was in your shoes, I would also be sad. So affective empathy, what I'm feeling. Cognitive empathy, the ability to think through somebody else's feelings. Now, here's the critical gender difference. With girls, there's a steady upward trajectory of both cognitive empathy and affective empathy from around about, right throughout their childhood, but particularly from around about that age of 11, 12, 13. We just see girls, they reach out to each other in comfort, but they also know how to use, because they understand how empathy works and how other people are feeling, they do know how to use that in less helpful ways sometimes as well. When it comes to boys, somewhere around that big testosterone boost, somewhere around 12 or 13, we see empathy drop. And it doesn't just drop. I mean, it precipitously falls off a cliff fast, and it stays down there. Like, it just goes the opposite direction to girls, super fast, and it stays there until around about 16, which is when it starts to bounce back in a slow-mo kind of way.
Did you say 25?
Well, like I said, a slow-mo kind of way. And this is where what's happening in the peer group, what happens with the media they consume, what's happening in their home environment, what's happening at school, the degree to which they're surrounded with kindness and empathy and goodness, that's going to have a motivating or demotivating impact on them in terms of the degree to which they're going to be empathic.
I was going to say, or how interested they are in girls.
That may also sometimes help, but sometimes I'm like Andrew Tate's interested in girls, not really high on empathy there. This is one of the critical things for parents of boys to teach their sons. It's so important for them to learn empathy.
When I hear Kate's message, I don't feel like this is an empathy issue, though. This sounds like...
I think you're right.
He sounds like a really great kid. He's really helpful to others. So if it's not an empathy thing, what else could it be?
Okay, Kate, there is a second issue here. It's related to empathy. It's related to that first big developmental reality. There is an MMA fight going on inside almost every teen boy's brain pretty much all the time.
Okay, you're saying MMA like I should know what that means. What is that?
Okay, MMA, it's mixed martial arts. You know, when you go past a club or a pub or something like that, and they've often got a big fight happening on the big screen. Well,
I try not to look in that direction. But
yeah, so it's the cage fighting sort of stuff, right? So you've got guys who they hit and they kick and they do all the things. And then when they knock their opponents over, they get on the ground and they start pounding them even though they're on the ground. It's not very gentlemanly at all, but there is an MMA cage fight happening in every teenage boy's, or almost every teenage boy's brain. And it's a cage fight between empathy and entitlement. And right now, at this age, entitlement has empathy on the mat and it is pounding it hard. And I think that entitlement's winning at this age. And what this does is it results in a really intoxicating mix of power and privilege for the boys. I mean, it happens at every age, but it's really challenging at this age. So when kids are saying nah, or they're refusing, or they're ignoring you and they're 8, I mean, it still bothers you as a parent, but it doesn't bother you the same way as it does when there is a 16-year-old man child, because he's so big. He's big like a man now. And when he says no, or when he refuses to get up, you know that cognitively he's got the capacity to see that you need help. You know that he's a mooching leech in the house. If he's not going to do anything to contribute, you expect him to do something. And so it just feels so much more concerning. He's big, and there's a higher level of expected responsibility around it. And for him, pushing back and saying no and pleasing himself serves his brain up the hormone equivalent of a short-term hit of all the stuff that teenagers are taught to say no to and to stay away from. It just feels so good. Now, it won't last. It won't last. That good feeling of, yeah, I can do what I want, that won't last. He's going to stay on the couch staring at his phone, and then a small part of him, at least, will feel really disgusted at himself for being so unwilling to contribute and help mum or dad out. But for a lot of kids, that small feeling of disgust isn't going to be big enough to actually get them off the couch and do something.
We talk about the 3 psychological needs of all of us,
right,
regardless of whether we're children or adults, being competency, connection, and autonomy. And when I think about our teenagers and their pushback,
they just want to control their own lives.
They just want to feel like they have control. And saying no, part of that feel-good moment is recognizing that I actually get to control this.
Yeah, so I think that ties in with where I kind of wanted to go, and that is to highlight that this could be a correction direction issue.
Well, I was about to say, I think for me, when I think about the challenges that we have in our home like this all the time, when we get to the core issue, every single time, it's a connection issue.
Okay, so I've talked a lot of times about the relationship bucket. Okay, water in the bucket is connection, air is correction and direction. When our kids are young, we shower attention all over them, right? So much connection, so much of being seen and heard and valued. And the connection bucket is big enough for multiple daily soaks.
Well, just look at the physical side of a child.
You pick them up and cuddle them.
You give them a cuddle, you give them a kiss, because they're so tiny and it's easy.
Right. I mean, as our daughters have gotten older, I'm not going to hold them as close and hold them as often as I did when they were younger. Okay, they're going through puberty, they're going through adolescence, and as a dad, I want to be close to my kids, but there's also appropriate boundaries that need to be held.
But even as a mum,
right,
as the kids get older, the relationship that I have with them changes.
So by the time they're teens, the balance really shifts where it's not just physical connection, it's all kinds of connection. We don't spend the same amount of time with them. They also don't spend the same amount of time with us.
And they don't want it.
They're not as depending. Well, here's the thing. They actually do want it.
Not to the same level, though. Not to the same level as a 2-year-old or a 4-year-old.
Sure. But the question boils down to one thing, and that's how do I encourage less leeching and more willing contribution in my team? And I think a central part of it has to be connection. It's got to be the way we spend time with our kids. Now, this doesn't mean we connect by pandering and sucking up and giving kids a leave pass whenever they don't want to do the right thing. It's about quality time. It's about connection. It's about walks and games and sports and conversations and meals and quiet moments on the end of the bed and going for a drive together. It's about real connection. So for me, when I'm hearing Kate's challenge, I just want to say, let's spend some time building that connection again. And you and I have both seen this with our own kids. If there's been some connection that's lacking for a while, your first attempts at connection,
pretty messy.
Often they do not bear fruit at all. Sometimes the kids push back. Sometimes it just doesn't go anywhere. You don't even know what to say. Connection is a bit like our muscles. If you don't use them, the first few goes back at the gym can be really strenuous, and they can even lead you to a strain and having to spend some more time away. Like they send you backwards rather than forwards. So I just think when you're not getting anywhere with your kids, your number one go-to has got to be connection.
I think next, once you've started to rebuild those connections with your teen, it's really important to have open, honest dialogue about what you're seeing in the house.
Yeah, and you can't do that if you haven't got a strong connection for your base. Like if you sit down and say, all right, we need to talk about responsibilities, we need to talk about roles, who's going to do what, the kids just hear more correction and direction.
What I love about what we do in our home is it's a family conversation. It's not about singling any person out. And it really is a conversation about how has it felt to be in our home this week?
Yeah.
And what are the things that we love about what happened this week? And what are the things that we just we don't feel are great. What do we want to change? And including our kids in it, it doesn't have to be us who says it, because somebody else in the house is going to go, you know what, Mum and Abby have been fighting all week. I haven't liked that. Or I haven't loved how the kitchen's been a mess all the time. Like, they'll bring those things up without you having to point out that that's been going on.
So that weekly conversation that we have is a really easy way to get into this, and just talk with the kids about what the expectations are. Let's make a plan. We're just going to work on one of these things. Oh, okay, so this week there's just been a general lack of unhelpfulness around the house. What's our plan this week? Do we all agree it doesn't feel good? Yeah, okay. So what's our plan this week to increase the level of helpfulness? So that's a really nice general way to do it. You can also attack it one-on-one, and I think that there's usefulness in doing that. You want to make sure that you don't get too legalistic about it. You don't get too caught up in roles and responsibilities. But when you're talking to a 16-year-old, those 3 E's: explore where they're at, explain what your needs are, and then empower them. So, buddy, where are you with this? Where are you willing to step in? What contribution will you make, and when and how? And if you're tired or if you're disengaged and we're asking you and we're getting nowhere, help us now. Help us to make the plan now. What's the best way for us to deal with this so that we don't get flustered and you don't become irate and the entitlement cycle continues? When you get them on the same team, it just makes such a difference. So that would be our second way forward.
I just think there's so much power in having those exploratory conversations with our kids and helping them to feel empowered in making better decisions moving forward.
Yeah.
If we can remember that there's give and take in any relationship. As a parent, I always want things done as soon as I ask, but often that doesn't take into account what my kids are doing in that instant. And so if we can give them the wriggle room to make decisions that feel a little bit more autonomous, we're going to get much more buy-in from them if they know, Mum, I'm going to have 5 more minutes at this and then I'll come and do it.
Really, we just want to tap into the good kid that he is, understand where he is, invite him to live up to the highest version of himself. He will, and every now and again he won't. If something seriously has to be done, stand in front of him, make eye contact, make the demand. As a parent, sometimes you've just got to do that, even with a 16-year-old boy. But the best discipline, ultimately, it comes down to not reading the riot act. It's not about punishment and consequences. It's not even about rights and roles and responsibilities. The best discipline's about problem solving, and hopefully the process that we've walked through in this podcast episode will help with that. The Happy Families podcast is produced by Justin Rulon from Bridge Media. For more information about making your family happier, please visit us at happyfamilies.com.au.